Hello, and welcome to another episode of Todd Talks. When Todd Talks, people listen. Hopefully. Can you see the rapier? Can you see it? I actually don't have a rapier. I have a bunch of other swords. I've got broadswords and twin hooks and daggers. I do not have a rapier. I might have to change that after this death battle, though, because today we are talking about Weiss Schnee versus Mitsuru Kirijo. And I do apologize to my Persona fans out there. I did not really know much about Mitsuru Kirijo before this death battle. I was never really into Persona, and then I got BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, and I learned about some of the characters, but I never got the DLC where Mitsuru was in. But not only am I happy to say that this is a very interesting character, I totally see why they put her against Weiss now. They're both rapier users. They do summons. They are ice queens, literally, and they both come from family legacies that aren't exactly the best. So, rock on. Also, I want to thank all of you, my dear viewers, because the my death battle preview for Green Lantern and Ben 10, which I know some of you are still ticked off, but go watch the death battle cast where they break down the entire matchup. It's great. Um, it is my most watched death battle video ever, with over 1,200 views, including Luis from Death Battle, who's, of course, one of the great animators who spearheaded the epic Samurai Jack versus Afro Samurai battle, because that was his idea when he was drunk. But hey, sometimes we have to get drunk to have our best ideas. I wouldn't know about that, but I'm just saying. But thank you, Luis, and I hope you're watching this one and you enjoy it. Thank you for all your work on Death Battle. Anyway, so thank you all for making that my most popular death battle video ever, beating out Lucy Carnage, which, again, I still can't believe that one got a lot of views. But hey, it worked. You guys are awesome, and I hope you like this one too. So let's get right into it. Weiss Schnee is from the world of Remnant, which is in Ruby. That's RWBY. And in this land of Remnant, there are four main lands. Actually, there's five, but whatever. And one of them is Atlas. And within the land of Atlas, there was a man who wanted to use the natural essence of the world called dust. That's a very loose interpretation. And refine it, mine it, and of course sell it. And this became the Schnee Dust Company. And he broke the bank. All right, I mean, he became very, very rich and very, very powerful because he became like the main dust distributor through the world. And in the world of Remnant, you use dust to enhance your ability so you can fight the monsters of the world called Grimm. So eventually, of course, he died, and the line of the Schnees became more and more pronounced because of the dust company that they had. Until Weiss Schnee's father came along, who literally decided to take the company and focus solely on the money aspect and the power aspect for it. He didn't care about the company name outside of it making him money. And thus, when Weiss was born, because for the record, the father is not a pure Schnee, he married into the family. So when Weiss was born, she was rich, she was powerful, she was a Schnee, and Schnee carried weight, and a Schnee's name carried weight, I should say. But this also made her a bit spoiled and a bit of a brat. And then when her father decided to care more about the company than her, it made her a bit of a rebel. So she eventually went to Beacon Academy in Vale and started her very long and arduous journey to becoming her own woman. And what a woman she has become in the 6 seasons of Ruby so far. So, where to begin? Let's start with her personality. Yeah, she's a bit of a brat, as I noted. She is temperamental, honestly, but she's also maintains a composed demeanor because of her upraising in the Atlas society, which is very prim and proper. She is confident in herself, but she knows she can strive to be more. And most importantly of all, she is loyal to her family name and to the company that her family built. That's very important. So when it comes to her battle skills, though, she uses her rapier, which do not try and get me to say the name. I do not know how to pronounce the name. I even rewatched Death Battle, and I still can't say that name. But she has a rapier. It's a 6-cylinder rapier because in Remnant, every weapon is a gun. Or at least it should be. I'm looking at you, Jean. I hope you don't come to Death Battle. Jean versus Link. I want to see Link kill him. Ah! So she has a rapier that is 6 cylinders that she can use for her dust compartments and to manipulate her attacks, which I'll get to that in a second. And between that and her aura, she has a variety of abilities she can use. Now, the aura in and Ruby is a special, it's called a force field and energy source. It is a literal part of their soul. Okay? And they can weaponize that to create a shield, heal small wounds, and of course enhance their attacks via their semblances and certain other abilities. So in Weiss's case, she has what they call a hereditary semblance, which is rare, in the form of her glyphs, which is also the name of my fan favorite Ruby character, Glyph. Anyway, but her glyphs allow her a wide variety of special attacks. For example, it can be used as a platform. It can be used to literally run up walls and get other people to run up walls. It can be used to trap or snare opponents. It can be used to like lift opponents off the ground or press them down. It can be used in combination with her dust to affect her own abilities. For example, she can use lightning dust in conjunction with her glyphs to create what they call time dilation, and she can speed up her abilities. Not that she really needs it per se, because she's already blindingly fast. She's easily the fastest member of Team Ruby, and yeah, and Ruby can turn into basically a rose tornado, and Weiss is faster than that. So she uses her speed along with her rapier for a pure precision attacks. She'll just go at it and she'll just bounce around, zigzag, use her glyphs to have total area control. And through that, she is a very accomplished warrior within the world of Ruby. She was vital for many battles against all kinds of Grimm, from like mega scorpion monsters to basically wolves and bears. I don't want to get into the names, they'll confuse you. She's fought, giant birds. She's fought mechs and robots. She's fought, of course, other hunters and huntresses, which is the titles of the warriors in the world. And she has come out on top more times than not. And her abilities are a key part of that. But as with all good characters, she also has to grow and evolve, which is why her other hereditary ability in regards to her semblance is summonings. But in a nice twist, her summonings are actually entities that were terrifying to her in the past. At present, she can do about 3 summons. She can summon a Borbatusk, which is a pig Grimm. She can summon a Lancer, which is a bee Grimm, which is terrifying to me. And she can summon an Armagigas, which was a mech suit of armor that her father actually had her fight in order to get permission to go to Beacon. Weiss won, and she was able to summon that later on. These summons have their, I'm going to say, the natural abilities of their hosts, inspirations. There we go, inspirations, in which they can do devastating attacks, fly around, and even be used in conjunction with the glyphs to teleport around the area. Like I said, Weiss is no joke. And as a part of Team Ruby, she has helped save the world multiple times and has helped fight off all kinds of threats. Okay, I guess you could argue she hasn't technically saved the world yet because of how the plot goes, but she's staved off certain events that could have caused the world a lot more problems. And then when they didn't, well, yeah, if you've watched Ruby, you know what happens. But the problem with Weiss, though, is that because of her upbringing, she's really bitter. I mean, I'm talking really bitter here. Her father is a source point in her life. Like, she was once said that she was given everything by her father, and she's like, that's not true, because her father doesn't love her. He literally tried to strip her inheritance because she defied him. All right, and he slapped her. I mean, dear gosh, man, you hit your own daughter, dude. But Weiss, she persevered. She got out of there. She got back to her team. But her desire to be a rebel has made her a bit reckless at times, and she can sometimes suffer from self-doubt in regards to her abilities. Like, it took her a long time to learn how to master her summons, and even then, it's not perfect mastery. She can summon the Armagigas, for example, but it does take time, and it takes a lot of concentration. In one fight where she kept trying to summon it, her opponent, Vernal, kept shooting her to break the concentration. So that can be a problem. Also, while she may be the fastest member of Team Ruby, she's also the least endurant and doesn't have the best stamina. In multiple fights, she's shown to go down somewhat easily. And even though she could take great attacks, her aura has a limit. Every single aura has a limit here. But with hers, it just seems that if she gets hit too many times, it can break her aura. And while the aura is her greatest defense, because the aura literally makes it so she can't be injured, even though that's kind of liberal interpretation, if the aura is gone, she can't heal and she can die. And she almost, if you remember the last season of Ruby, she almost did die when Cinder stabbed her. And if it wasn't for Jean restoring her aura, she would have been killed in action. But she endured. So she does. She's not perfect. She's definitely not perfect, but she is very, very competent, a very proud member of Team Ruby, and she has greatly advanced from the girl we met in the first couple episodes. And it's going to be interesting to see her journey coming or continuing on in the future seasons of Ruby. Moving on to Mitsuru Kirijo. The Kirijo group was a business group in the world of Persona, and again, I apologize. I only know what I know from like the wikis and the guides that I found, and and on a surface level, it seemed like the Kirijo group were a good group, bent on forwarding science and all that stuff, but secretly they were doing like really bad experiments, and they found an alternate plane of reality called the unconscious space or something like that, and eventually they decided, hey, let's like break this reality, and they actually did, and actually sent all the beings from that unconscious world into the real world in the forms of shadows. And this included having monsters attack them during one of their experiments, and this caused a young Mitsuru Kirijo to actually have her own shadow appear in the form of a persona, and this started a very long journey that would be marked with many pitfalls, but in the end, redemption for her family for all the pain that it had caused the world after the revealing of the Tartarus and in the 0 hour, and yeah, it's complicated. All right, you think Ruby is complicated? Go try and read a Persona script. Yeah. So to battle the beings in the 0 hour, or was it the midnight hour? I'm sorry, I probably got that. I'm gonna say 0 hour. It sounds cooler. In the 0 hour, the world basically freezes, and then like monsters are allowed to come out and play, if you will. Well, a group of kids basically were able to break through the time freezing spell of this hour and go and fight the monsters, and they were called the Seas. That's SEES, and Mitsuru was the leader of the group. And because of this and her training from her youth, not only is she a master rapier user, but she has had the most combat experience in regards to fighting shadows and other monsters among the group. And her abilities allow her to do all kinds of interesting things. The biggest thing was because of her, how should I say that? Well, her persona, which I'll get to in a second, but also her innate abilities are enhanced through the shadow hour, 0 hour, whatever. She has an incredibly analytical mind. Okay, like she is able to discern information from opponents and then support her group to allow them to get to victory. So she did this for a long, long time, and it has a lot of highs and lows, and she did get the redemption. But in the end, it was all about her coming to terms with her place in what happened to the world. Like, for example, she didn't tell her friends in the group that her family was the reason all this was happening. And then when her father died, she basically became suicidal and didn't have the will to live anymore. But then she got the will back thanks to one of her friends and became even stronger because of her persona, which we're just going to go straight to the one that we know they're going to use in the death battle, Artemisia. Artemisia is her, they call it like her shadow self, So think of it like a stand, kind of, for you JoJo users. Yeah, you know what I mean. So Artemisia is an extension of Mitsuru herself and her own abilities, and actually has a kind of what do we want to call it? Cohabitation, symbiotic. There we go, symbiotic nature, where the persona can attack, but also Mitsuru can attack. They're very much a unit, and their own abilities are enhanced through each other. So they're both ice users for the most part, but they also have buffs, they have debuffs, they have healing abilities. It's actually very, very cool. So yeah, and then again, Artemisia is technically an extension of Mitsuru herself, right? So like a stand, you can't exactly hurt Artemisia. I know that stands can be hurt. I'm just using this as a rough example. So Artemisia can't be hurt, but she can be worn down. And then if something happens to Artemisia, it actually happens to Mitsuru as well. So again, it's really much that symbiotic nature. But through their abilities, they were able to defeat all kinds of enemies, including Erebus, who was the big bad of Persona 3, as far as I could tell. And they were able to, bring the world some modicum of peace, and even erase the what happened in the 0 hours in the world until they got back their memories, because the power of love and blah 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 blah. It's an anime. What do you want? So going back to Mitsuru, she has like I said, an analytical mind, but she also has a ton of ice powers, and also makes her basically immune to ice, or as Death Battle said, completely immune to ice and ice-based attacks and freezing cold. And yet she wears a fur coat. Why? Because she looks awesome. That's why. Anyway, so her precision, her precision is her greatest strength and her greatest weakness, because when she hits, she knows she can hit, and she can combo her moves a great many times. But it also is a downside, because she needs that precision, and so that precision is kind of shaken. It kind of makes her a bit uneasy. Meanwhile, her persona is so fast, it can actually predict and dodge attacks just by looking at her opponent. Artemisia has a super sense, literally, that makes it to where she can sense her opponent's abilities. This is going based off the manga, and so if she can, monitor these attacks, she can basically dodge them all, which makes her very hard to hit. Not possible, and it is still possible to wear her down, but it's very, very difficult. And so through her leadership, she helped save the world. She got to redeem herself and, honor the true memory of her family and her father. She got to have a happy ending. She could technically date the main characters. She got to spend time with her friends and all that. And she's been like one of the stalwarts of the Persona franchise, even to where she got put into BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, Persona 4 Arena, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, she's pretty interesting. And her only real weakness outside of the precision attacks, like having to land, is that she is weak to fire. Okay, which you'd think, well, that's obvious. Well, Weiss technically isn't weak to fire, and she's an ice queen too. So there you go. But yeah, her persona has a limit per se. It has to recharge at times, and she is weak to fire. And she's more of a support character based on what I was reading. Like, her abilities make her perfect as a support role. So she's not technically a fighter as such, but she's also incredibly strong, incredibly fast. She was the leader of the group, and she actually prefers brute force to support tactics. So it's kind of a nice little conundrum, don't you think? All right, so who wins between Weiss and Mitsuru? So I know a lot of you are thinking that because this is a Ruby character, and Ruby's owned by Rooster Teeth, and Rooster Teeth owns Death Battle, that Weiss is going to win hands down. I don't think that's going to happen, and here's why. I really thought for a while that Weiss had the speed advantage, because it's literally her thing. Again, she can just zoom in and out of anywhere, and between her glyphs, she can have like total control of the battlefield. But here's the problem with that. Weiss has been defined as hypersonic, which is incredibly fast. Mitsuru has been defined as massively hypersonic. Like, apparently in her games, she has dodged natural lightning, which means she is faster than, let's see, what was it? It was 250,000 miles per hour, which is way more than hypersonic. Again, I'm going off of Death Battle knowledge. So, yeah, she's incredibly fast, and her endurance level is way over what Weiss can do. Like, she took a hit from Erebus and kept going. Whereas Weiss can sometimes get blasted a few times. Her aura is shattered, and then she's done. Their strength, that's a little bit complicated, because it's I honestly feel like they're on the same level in terms of strength per se. But Mitsuru is also shown to have a little bit more force. Like, force is her thing. She likes using a lot of force, and even with her ice attacks, which Weiss is not immune from. She can bring the pain that way. The real difference, though, is the summons. Weiss can summon. Mitsuru summons more easily. Like, as I noted, Weiss takes time to use her summons, especially when she's trying to summon Armagigas, versus Artemisia, who is an extension of the soul of Mitsuru's soul, and she just has to, I think, use a gun. It was kind of complicated, but she just has to use the gun to summon her. Once she's summoned, she's out. And she doesn't have to worry about her for a while. So that is doing this. This is literally what happens in the game. Doing this is a lot easier than summoning taking time and everything. So I think that Mitsuru is faster. She is definitely more endurant. Weiss's aura will have a limit, and all she has to do is last long enough to break the aura, and then Weiss is dead. That's literally the breaking point here. And I know some people are going to say, well, why isn't that why Tifa should have won? I'm not going to comment on that. I think Yang should have won that fight, and she did. So this is a different one, though. And Mitsuru, as a fighter, is analytical. So she's going to understand and have a clairvoyance of the area. She can sense people, just like Artemisia can sense people. She can sense a person. So Weiss's glyph teleportation, it's not necessarily going to work on Mitsuru because it might catch her off guard per se the first time, but once she understands it, she'll use her own abilities plus her persona to deal damage to Weiss. And again, Mitsuru is a lot more endurant than Weiss is. So based on everything I've found, I think that Mitsuru Kirijo is going to beat Weiss Schnee. And I'm a Ruby fan. Okay, I love Ruby. I've barely played Persona, and so you think I'd go with Weiss here, but based on what I found, Mitsuru is going to win. And I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, but Weiss has fire dust. And that's true. But will Weiss be able to use it? Weiss is dominantly an ice dust user, and when she might figure it out in time and eventually, but just because you have a weakness to something doesn't mean you're going to lose. Okay? And once Mitsuru knows that Weiss has fire attacks, she's going to do everything she can to be more dodgy, stay at a greater length, and make sure it doesn't get used against her because she's that smart. So, there you go. I am picking Mitsuru Kirijo. And with that, I'm ending this episode of Todd Talk. Who do you think is going to win between Weiss Schnee and Mitsuru Kirijo? I'm so glad I can say Mitsuru Kirijo now. It's so fun. Let me know in the comments below. And are you excited for this death battle? So, I thank you for watching. If you made it this far, I know you were listening, and I'll see you around.